The book of Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 1. Hear you children, the instruction of a father, and attend to an understanding. For I give you good doctrine, and forsake not my Torah. For I was my father's son, tender and his only child. And in the sight of my mother, he taught me also, and said unto me, Let your heart retain my words, and guard my commandments, and live. Get wisdom, get understanding, forget it not. Neither decline from the words of my mouth. Forsake her not, and she shall guard you. Love her, and she will keep you. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and with all you're getting, get an understanding. Shalom, Yahuah, Elder DFG. Hey, brothers and sisters, this is just a short, I guess, word to the wise. Maybe that's the best way to say it. We're living in some perilous times. I think we all would agree with that. By now, we should be in agreement or in alignment. But in these times that we're in, one of the things that I want to emphasize to each and every one of you, and I mean this from sincere, concern. In the book of Joshua, chapter 24, verse 14, Joshua tells us that we have to serve Yahuah in sincerity, means you have to mean it. And in truth, that means you have to understand that what you say, does matter, and your actions or your behavior are a reflection of who you are. So you can't say, you're this, but you live like that, or you're that, but you live like this. You have to have, fruit that match up. Well, you will have fruit. Let me say that correctly. Your fruit is who you are. So if you lie at your convenience, if you don't keep your word, if you change your word based off of how you feel, not based off of, the doctrine or being corrected by the doctrine, then it's an indicator that you're struggling with maturity. We're living in a time because there's really a lack of an accountability because of political correctness. We were brought up, in the last, we weren't brought up. Many of our brethren and sisters have been brought up, in the age of self-expression and no true ownership of the outcome. In other words, we have become perpetual excuse makers. It's somebody else's fault. Somebody else did me something. The world is a ghetto. Black people get treated wrong. All these things may have some measure of truth to it, but there's also inside of that measure of truth is owning the outcome, owning, one's behavior, owning one's decisions. And unfortunately, over this last generation or so, we have, adults who are, are not taking any responsibility, for I guess the best way to say is for their own decision making, not taking any responsibility for it, and it's reflecting in immaturity. I mean, we have people now, brothers and sisters, who are in their, in their 30s, late 30s, for an example, and they're just as immature as somebody that was 16 or 17 years old. Now, because I've been on this earth for almost 2 generations now, I always tell each and every one of you, I'll give you an example. My mom was 35 years old and had 8 children. And she was a single mother, dealing with 8 children from the ages of 13 to 1 year old. And there was nobody in there, keeping her, in balance. She had to make real decisions, adult decisions, 35 years old. And yet we have people who are 35 and above. Some of them are 60 years old, 61 years old, even older, who are emotionally so immature. It's borderline evil, for lack of a better word, evil. I started off with Proverbs chapter 4, and I read down to verse 7 because that's where I wanted to stop. It said, wisdom is the principal thing. And with all you're getting, get an understanding. Your first understanding is that, emotional instability and you're 30-something years old and above, that is inappropriate behavior. That is totally unacceptable to everybody but you and those who think like you. Male or female, does not matter. You know, truth be told, if you're in your 20s, you're responsible for the decisions that you make. You need to own it. Otherwise, you're going to be a perpetual excuse maker. You're going to fail. Now, this book teaches us that we are to regard somebody that's well-traveled, means somebody that has some life experience. In other words, to say you should give ear to them. You don't have to do what they said, but you should be wise enough to at least consider what they're saying. And what I'm saying to you is that, you know, all of this immature behavior, you better put that to rest, or you're going to be 40 years old acting the same way, 50 years old acting the same way. And I can assure you, I know one or two 60-something-year-olds who are as immature as they were when they were 16, 17 years old. Yeah, they may have had children, but they were just, all they did was just, they just was lack of a better word, just a baby making machine, I guess. I don't know. And it doesn't matter if you have one child, if you have 10 children, or you don't have any children. But the long story short, you're supposed to be growing. You're supposed to increase. Every 4 or 5 years, you're supposed to hit a level of maturity that when you look back on the 4 or 5 previous years, you can measurably say, I have grown. I have grown. I have grown. I have grown. This is why it's saying wisdom is the principal thing. In other words, you're supposed to learn and get an understand how important it is that you are maturing. See, what's coming upon this earth, brothers and sisters, is already here, but what's about to reveal itself upon this earth, if you're immature, you're not going to be able to sustain that. If you're an emotion, you allow your emotions, how you feel about something, or you base things based off of if you agree with it or don't agree with it, you're in a whole lot of trouble. A whole lot of trouble. You have no idea how much trouble you're in. You know, we often talk here about resiliency and fortitude, and making up one's mind and sticking to it regardless of whatever, treacherous snares we have to go through. This is why the book said that when the enemy comes in like a flood, means that stuff is going to happen. When the book says weapons formed against you will not prosper against you. But this is predicated on one's maturity. Steadfastness. It's not based off of, because you having a bad day or a bad week, or you looking at, someone, or you becoming, insecure because of some situation, because you are not an adult. You're not, and I'm not even saying adult. Let me repent of that. Like Yahuah said, I repent of, choosing many in Yasharel. Let me repent of that. I stand corrected. It has nothing to do with being an adult. It has everything to do with, growth. And this is why, people have learned to be convenient liars. What I mean by convenient liar is that if they don't agree with something, they changed the direction on it without cause, because the only cause they have because they don't agree with it. And they expect not to be held accountable for it. But this book tells us that is the behavior of the wicked. What does Zechariah 11:5 says? Again, I'm not going to be very long, because what I'm challenging is you to look in the mirror and ask yourself, are you still acting like you acted when you were 16? Just because you have a child don't make you grown. Just make you have a child. Just makes you a parent. Probably not a very good parent in more cases than not, but that part is debatable. You'll find out long term on what type of child your child becomes, what type of adult your child becomes. Then you'll know if you were a good parent or not. If you're talking about parenting, I'm not saying a good person. I'm talking parenting in that regard. But look what the book says here. These for those of you who feels like and somehow or another there's no accountability, for your behavior. Look what this is, Zechariah chapter 11. Who says this? It goes chapter 11, verse 5. It says, verse 3. See, there is a voice of howling of the shepherd for the glorious spoil, a voice of a roaring young lion for the pride of Jordan is spoiled. Talking about a spoiled person. If they can't go their way, or if they don't agree with the things going on, then they act out like a child that's not trained up the right way. And they think they can justify it by saying, well, you know, I came out of a broken home, or I came out of this. Well, you're going to stay broken for the rest of your life? That's the plan? That's your plan? That's what you're going to stick to? Praise Yahuah that all of us don't feel that way then, if that's your plan, because again, I came out of a broken home too, but I refused to stay broken. That was a personal choice. And to stay broken is a personal choice. In other words, you're spoiled. If it don't go your way, if you don't agree with it, then, you know, you think it's okay to, you know, to knock the cup off the table like you're 3 years old. Slam the door like you're 3 years old. Or 5 years old, maybe. Start, you know, running off at the mouth, saying things that, you know, you know, that has nothing to do with the real reality, because you can, because you don't feel like going to be any consequences for it. But there will be consequences for it, and that's why this conversation is so important. Look what it reads here. It says, going on, so it talks about those who are spoiled among us. If it can't be my way, then I'm going to just, you know, I'm going to rebel. I'm going to resist. I'm going to act out. I'm going to show everybody, you know, I don't like it. But you're not impressing anybody with that behavior. You're sure not impressing the Creator. Verse 4 says this, thus says Yahuah, so we know who's talking, feed the flock of the slaughter. Talking about those who are spoiled. Whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty. This is talking about, again, immaturity, lack of concern for others, more concerned about how things impact you, never seeing community over yourself. This is why we have come up with the hashtag FAC, Family Accountability Culture, which we know is Torah-centric, or the ancient way, better said. Jeremiah 6 and 16. And for you parents that does not apply to, then, you know, praise Yahuah for you. I hope you're living by this Torah. But again, you know, I'll say praise Yahuah for you. Because I do know, you know, a couple of people. You know, one come to my mind 100%, Brother Mendez and his woman. You know, I'm sure he don't mind me saying Monique, and they're raising their children. And neither one of these two individuals are 40 years old. And they've been raising them for a long time. They don't make excuses. They figure it out. But Brother Dennis stand on his Torah, 10 toes down, 2 fists up. Y'all know Brother Mendez, who teaches with me on the Wednesday night Bible studies. He's a classic example of what I'm talking about. A lot younger than some of these old, so-called, older women and older men who are emotional tornadoes. I'm not even going to say roller coasters. These are not emotional roller coasters. These are emotional destructive people. And they'll do this part right here is what applies to them. Who they slay others, or who hold them, whose possessors slay them, and they hold themselves not accountable. And they that sell them say, blessed be Yahuah, for I am rich. In other words, these are excuse makers. See, the word has multiple applications, brothers. So sometimes this is why you need to be taught. Yeah, I know what it reads, and I know it could be talking about wicked shepherds and pastors and things of that nature, but there's also underlying meanings too. The word is a living word. The word has to be applied into our lives. If you're from the South, like myself, Louisiana, you know the importance of spices in food. I mean, there's food, and there's food that has taste. There's the word, and then there is what? There's elevation of the word, or the taste of the word. And so in this case, it's taking and bringing taste to the word, saying that it's not just in a religious way, it is in a practice or just a self-centered way. And so you have all of these individuals, brothers and sisters, who should be, examples to younger people. And now they're becoming, just the opposite. It's teaching them to be selfish. It's teaching the young people, to only care about self. And now you live in a world where, as the book says, you're afraid of your own children. Or look in the world where women are ruling, and most of them using the excuse because there is no man to lead, so they leading. It's kind of a justification of haughty and pride. I'm not going to go against Yahuah's Torah. That's exactly what he said when you read Isaiah chapter 3, start reading that verse, 11 and 12. He says, that's a haughty-minded woman who thinks that way, high-minded. But it's also a very immature woman. In that same chapter, it talks about men who want someone else to do the work while they reap the benefits of the work. I'm talking about Isaiah chapter 3. These are immature men, immature women. And there's a broad range that's involved here. From 25, again, up to as old as, 70. Hell, some of them are 75. Lie like a rug, whenever lie like L-I-E, just without, no guilt, no nothing. Just do it. If they get angry, they pout like a little child. I don't want to go too deep in it, but they go in the room. Like my son Noah, the other day he was doing a little teaching thing, and he got to a place where it got a little complicated. You're like, well, the best I can do. And if that's the best you can do is go in the room, then you have a whole lot of maturing to do, and you better check yourself before Yahuah corrects yourself. And he's not playing. What is Jeremiah chapter? What is that? 17. Say Yahuah is he said, I'm gonna set a fire that you can't put out on you. You don't reverse your behavior. There's supposed to be, again, a growth in you. Otherwise, if there was any chance for you to survive, you're blowing it. You are blowing it, brother. You are blowing it, sister. Because you're still inside of, what's in it for me versus what's in it for us. And this is exactly why the DFG family cultivates an environment of inclusion. I'm talking about where everybody has to participate and everybody is held accountable. So this I'll leave you with. Ask yourself the question. The book says, and Daniel says that, that in the end, that the wise would understand what I'm talking about. They will understand the perils, the dangers that are here. And they would recognize that, being emotional and because how you feel is not, all that's going to end up getting you killed. Let's just say it like I'm just telling you, it'll get you killed. You're going to die a horrible death. You are going to remove that head. You're going to be the sour grape that Isaiah chapter 5, 1 through 5 talks about. Yahuah said, I had something good for you, but you couldn't get out of the way. So now you're going to have to deal with what's bad for you. And you're going to think you're right because your haughtiness or your pride will cause you to be in error. So if you, again, and I'll reemphasize it to you again, as a mature, older person, again, if you're in your 30s, you are old enough to be someone's grandmother. It's time to grow the hell up and act like a damn adult that has some sense. Or you can end up one like these old damn fools that you hear me talking about from time to time. I've given you names. This is petty. They lie whenever they want to lie. They don't keep no covenant. They ask for something, and yet they do something totally different. That's what is implied here as I give a deeper interpretation of Zechariah 11, 3 to 5. Don't, again, it's a sad thing. See an old-ass woman being jealous of other women, or old-ass women who don't even understand that these are her sisters, these are the daughters of Zion, and just because she don't agree with a certain type of lifestyle does not give her the right, the piss in their food. I'm talking about on this Torah. So that to be said, again, just FYI, take it or leave it. But again, books say wisdom is the principal thing, means growth. And all you're getting an understanding, means measurement. Shalom, Yashrael, Elder DFG.